Hello, everyone. A little late, maybe by 30 seconds or something. I had to quickly put something on my calendar agenda for tomorrow. And because I know if I don't do it now, 2 hours from now when the show's over, I might forget to do it. And this is something that I have to do tomorrow. And so that would be very inconvenient if I forgot. How is everybody? This is Unfound Live for September 22nd of 2025. I have a fantastic show planned for you tonight. And as I always state, whatever is in the title, you can guarantee that I will get to it before the 2 hours are over. That's what I've started doing. Don't want to market something and then it doesn't happen. I would hate to do that. I think that would do damage to my reputation. So we're going to avoid that. But like I said, probably get to some other things as well that are also equally fantastic. And put some more. If you don't know, it usually takes me at least a few hours to put this live show together. I really start putting it together like on Saturday. I start thinking about what's gone on over the past week. Is there anything on my mind that I need to discuss? Is there anything that's popped up in the news? As you know, I've started doing a bit of analysis on disappearances that have not yet been featured on Unfound. Really not going deep into the theories or anything, but looking at the public information and making assessments. And of course, as you can see in the title tonight, I'm going to do that on Ray Gricar. Of course, a lawyer who disappeared from the center area of Pennsylvania 20 years ago. It's not been a disappearance that has been featured on Unfound. Have had requests for that to be done, but haven't made it happen yet. But I am going to talk about it tonight. Also going to talk a little bit more about Jeffrey Epstein. This was a question that I posed to some people this past week. I wanted their input on an idea, something that has come to my mind regarding what went on with him and all of the allegations and everything else. Of course, I have spoken about it recently. When was that? Maybe within the last couple months. I want to give that another shot. And then, as you can see, death row info. What does that mean? Well, you'll know when I get to it. Don't want to ruin it right now. But as you are watching tonight, please do not forget to give this show a thumbs up. If you're not yet a subscriber to this channel, you can do that right down in the bottom right-hand corner. If you think there are other people, friends, family, co-workers that you think would like the podcast, would like this channel, tell them about it. And you can support Unfound a variety of ways. Patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. PayPal.me/Unfound Podcast. You can hit the super chat button while you are watching tonight. And then also by joining the channel and getting some things here on YouTube and getting some things that other people do not. So what has gone on since we all got together a week ago? And I continue to say, I don't know where the weeks go. But last Wednesday, a trivia day, We were first going into the final question, but because due to the math, we had already won the season. I chose, as the person who fills out the trivia answers, to put 0 for the final question. And we ended up winning the season by 21 points. Close, but really not. I mean, it was close, but we would have gotten the final answer that night anyway. So, we could have won by 100-some points, really. But being that we didn't have to chance it, there was no reason. No different than if it's the end of a football game, whether you want to, go into the victory formation and try for another touchdown, probably just safe to go, kneel it down. That's what we did. And we ended up winning the season. Over 12 weeks, we had more points, all added up more than any other team. And the seasons go for 3 months. So that would be July, August, and September. And this is the second season we won this year. We actually won January, February, March as well. We came in second in the second season. So that would be April, May, and June. And the main reason is because we took some zeros during that time, going for final questions. It's like Jeopardy. You can bet all your points, and we did that, and we missed them, and so we didn't get any points. We still finished second, which isn't bad. But I made the determination after that happened that I wanted to make a commitment on the team that no zeros this season. No zeros. We're certainly allowed to miss final questions, but we're not taking zeros. If we're not 100% sure, we're not putting any points on that final question. And so we ended up going through the whole season, getting points every week. And that strategy paid off to the point where we got to the final week and we didn't have to answer the final question correct. So I'm glad that my plan worked out. I like winning. I am a person who believes that people who win have better lives than people who lose. So that's why I'm competitive as I am. And so it went very well on Wednesday night. We won the season. And this Wednesday, the top 5 teams from the season play for $100 cash. And so I'm greatly looking forward to that on Wednesday. And then the new season starts the next Wednesday, so a week and a half from now. But then on Saturday, I also played trivia again, also with some of my teammates, the newer teammates, over at a place called Sharks. And wouldn't you know it, we won there too. We were second going to the final question, but we got the final question. The first place team didn't. And so we won there too. So it was a very nice week of trivia. Always love it when a plan comes together. And you should know the way we handle it. The team that gets together on Wednesdays, at least part of the team now has been around, for over a decade. And I guess I've kind of become the captain of the team because of, asking some new people to join us. And I'm the guy that fills out all the paperwork and all of that. So greatly enjoyed captaining that team. But when I get together on Saturdays, that's like their team and I'm joining in. So I'm just a layperson over there on Saturdays, which I can do that well too, where I just have to sit back. I don't have to worry about filling out anything, making any big decisions. I can just sit there and try to answer some questions. So different role depending on which team and what night. But there you go. So that's going on trivia. New season, like I said, starts a week and a half from now. But this Wednesday, our name will be put on the plaque in the restaurant where we play, and the top 5 teams play for $100 that night. Other things going on. Things are next Monday are going to get very, very complicated around here. I might have mentioned in a previous live show from maybe a couple months ago that they're going to be doing a lot of work on this building. This building is almost, I think it's 39 years old, and they've taken really good care of it. I mean, you'd never know that it was that old, really. Really, really in good shape building. Really, I really mean that. But they're going to be doing some things, and one of the things they're doing is they are redoing all of the balconies on every unit in this building. And there are like 70 condos in this building. And so starting next Monday, they're going to be working. They're going to start on the A units, which are over here behind me, top to bottom. They're going to start at the top. So on 20A, work their whole way down to 3A. And then they're going to come over to the B units where I live. The A units are 3 bedrooms. Mine is a 2-bedroom. They're going to start at 20B, work their whole way down to 3B. And so during this time, the balconies are all going to be shut down for insurance reasons. Even if they're not working on your balcony, you're not going to allow to be out there, and they're going to they're going to do something over here. And they're going to be putting new tile in. So I have to take all of my balcony furniture, the new furniture. Remember, I got new furniture a few months ago. I bought it myself. You have to take all of it off, put it out there on the landing. We're allowed to put it out there by the elevators. And so it's going to be really, really loud around here for a while because this building really reverberates. So that is going to make recording episodes and recording phone calls to take notes and everything a little difficult. We'll just have to see how bad it gets. We'll just have to see. And that'll be constant between 8 and 5 o'clock during the week. So, yeah, I'm not looking forward to that. But what are you going to do? That's just one of the things, I guess, the condo life in a building like this. I'm allowed to live here, certainly. And really, the only thing I really, really have to worry, think about from a living point of view is when they finally get to my balcony. I would say there's nothing wrong with my balcony. But I don't know. What do I know about construction? Nothing. So, when they're here, I'll just have to probably not be around while they're doing that. And like I said, it depends on how loud it gets in this building on where I'm going to be able to do work and whether I'll be here, whether I'll not be here, and will I go to Starbucks or wherever else. Because really, I don't think in this building there will be any place that will be totally, totally quiet. We'll just have to see. So that's coming up. And then after that, they're painting the entire building. So that'll happen next year. My building is pink, like flamingo pink, and they're going to paint the entire building. So that'll be something. And if you're wondering how much it costs to paint my building, I think I heard $1.5 million. So there you go. Comes out of the HO fees that the owners pay. Of course, I'm just a renter. So those are some of that's what's going on here. I had been told that this was going to be happening early this year. And now it's finally upon me. And Brian asked, how long till they're done with all the balconies? I have no idea. I went down and spoke to the building manager last Thursday or Friday because I had a couple questions. No prediction, because a lot of it depends on what if a hurricane comes through? What about the weather? That really could delay everything. So I don't know. They can't. They're. It's open-ended, Brian, I guess is what I would say. So let's see who's in here before I continue. Hello, everything. What's going on with you? Pukli P. Popakowitz the third. Wow. Is there actually a first and a second? That's interesting. Charlie, what's going on? Good to see you. Lisa. Yeah, Lisa bragging about her Chiefs winning yesterday. They played the New York Giants. I mean, the Giants, what? They're barely even an NFL team. Hello, D. What's going on? Yes, Disc Golf Beach, heavy metal. I agree with all of that, D. Michelle with 2 L's. Good to see you. Maureen, Brian, Mary Jane, Stephanie. Good job. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate the good jobs on the trivia wins. Yeah, I like winning. In fact, I'm thinking that a couple of my trivia teammates think I like winning a little too much. Hello, Fishing. Fishing is here. Mary Jane is from Maryland. It's a very cool state, Mary Jane. Have not been to Maryland in quite a while, though. When was the last time I was in Maryland? Man, I think the last time I was in Maryland was the winter of 97 to 98 because I went to Washington, D.C., and I think I did, the young woman who was with me, I think we did somehow venture into Maryland while we were down there. But that was the last time, like 30 years ago, Mary Jane. Rockford, and then I know I saw Olympian here. If that's Olympia, Washington, Maureen, then no, never been there. Rockford, hey, Ed, did you sew a C on your trivia jersey? It's yeah, well, I'm not much of a hockey fan, Rockford. So the answer is no. But, you know, I do watch a little soccer. Maybe I could get the armband. Maybe that might be something. Maybe something to consider. But I appreciate that. If nothing else, Rockford, if this was NFL football, I'd be wearing the helmet with the little green dot. So, you know, I could talk back and, you know, I can get the signals from the coach or whatever. I'd be wearing the helmet. So there you go. So the construction is coming. If you didn't notice, I did make the chicken wing cooking video public now. I was private, but now anybody who searches for chicken wing cooking on the internet will come across that video. It doesn't have many, maybe has 500 video watches or something like that, whatever. But I did now make it public, and it has like 28 comments, which is more comments than I think any other video. Most of the other, you know, true crime videos, disappearance videos have. Go figure. But I did get a lot of compliments on it. And I did get some people saying that they were going to use my instructions to make wings for themselves. I hope none of them die of food poisoning or get burned with oil or anything. I hope that doesn't happen. So there's that. Everything says, loved your cooking, Ed. You're welcome. I really appreciate it. I had a good time doing it. I know that's been, you know, a couple months ago now, a month ago, 6 weeks ago. It was a spur of the moment thing. It was an ugly Saturday. I couldn't go out and throw the discs. And I was like, well, I've been thinking about doing this. Let's just do it. There was really not that much planning for it. I just set up the tripod and my phone. No script, nothing, just hit record and did it. And it came out, 32 minutes total? I thought it came out pretty good for doing no planning. And what else? Dad's doing good. Talk to him today. His football team, the Slippery Rock, they just call themselves the Rock. They blew out Shippensburg this past weekend, so my dad was all excited about that. He was at the game, 88 years old. He's probably the oldest person there. But it was a beautiful Saturday evening in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. And he showed up. And, he likes when they win. And, my dad did play football there back in the mid to late 1950s. So, he feels a very, kinship there. And he graduated from there, got his master's in education from there. So he always enjoys going to the games. He's a very faithful fan. And then afterwards, we talk about the game. And I watch sometimes. Mainly, I listen to him on the internet. I can watch him here, but most of the time, I just listen and see what's going on. So we have something to talk about. If if he wasn't paying attention, or he wasn't, there's no way I would be paying attention to Slippery Rock football. I just do it so we have something to talk about. And then finally, anything else going on? I think this is it. But the final thing is, I had my singing. All of you are going to be in that. I know when I bring music up and everything, it always generates some good comments in the chat. Last Friday, I had a really good lesson with my teacher, Jacqueline. Really like her a lot. She's Canadian. She's in Toronto. She's a fantastic singer. Like her a lot. And she's taught me a lot. She's a good teacher. And I know I can gauge that because remember at one time I played the piano. So I know what it's like to take music lessons, going way back. I like her a lot. But she told me that besides doing the regular exercises and really working on my vowels and breathing technique and all that, she wanted to start working on a song with me. And she wants to do that for the very reason of, well, then how do you apply these drills and all these things? How do you apply it to a real song? A real song. So she instructed me to pick out a song that we are going to work on. Of course, not a really, really crazy difficult song, but it's one that I know well. Maybe I like to sing. I like the band or the album or whatever. But I can sing it, but it's just a little difficult. She didn't want it to be too easy, too low or whatever. But on the other hand, she surely didn't want me to pick Eyes of a Stranger by Queensryche either. So somewhere in between there. And I'm going to tell you what song I picked here in a moment. But the reason I picked it is because I'm a big fan of this band. In fact, I wanted to go see this band when they were in the area, but the ticket prices were outrageous for some reason. But it's a song I've known about for a long time. I can remember roller skating to this song going back to 1983, 1984. It's in my range and I can generally sing it, but when I sing it, the phrasing in it and the breathing and some holding of some notes, sometimes I feel very strained. Even though it's within my range, I still feel very strained for some reason. And I've never been able to figure it out. So I picked that song as the first one. Once again, didn't want to get too crazy on it because we're trying to work on using all these skills that I've gained to apply it to a real song. And so it has to be something that's not too easy, but on the other hand, not something that's way too hard that really is just out of my range and my technique and everything, really, really out of it. So here is the song that I picked. Maureen says she's originally from Slippery Rock, PA. Maureen, I don't even know how many times I've been through that little town there. I do not even know. I've eaten at Bob's Subs. I've stopped at the Sheets there. I've been all over the Slippery Rock campus. Many, I don't even know how many times. My dad goes up there all the time, loves cruising around and watching football practice or whatever is going on up there. And of course, maybe I think at least some of you know, I don't know if you know, Marine, but I went to Grove City, which is of course right down the road from Slippery Rock. Of course, Slippery Rock is the party school. Grove City is the strict educational school. I know I told you that a bunch also. It is just funny to hear it from on my podcast. Well, yeah, it's weird how that works, Maureen. Thank you. Great little town, but, once again, I will continue to say I'm happy that I don't live in Pennsylvania anymore. It's fine being there for a couple of weeks with my dad and everything, but there's a reason you live in Olympian now, Maureen, and I live in Clearwater Beach, Florida. Anyway, the song that I picked out was When You Close Your Eyes by Night Ranger. Now, some of you, if you're really young, don't know that song. But if you're of a certain age and a certain musical education, then you do. But like I said, it's a song that really I can sing it. It's really sometimes no problem. But when you get up to when you close your eyes, do you dream about me? When you close your eyes, do you dream about me? That and you have to hold that out. And for all you really music people out there, that's an A4. It's like the A above middle C on a piano. It's not that high. I mean, I can sing some other songs now decently that get up to about D5, which is fairly high for a guy, at least at my level. But there's something about holding that E, that me on A4 that I'm in tune. I'm not flat or anything, but man, it feels strained. So, but I think it has to do with the phrasing in the song and some of the words. And it's very kind of quick, and you don't have a lot of time to get your breath. I think that's all plays into this. So that is the song that I have picked out. But it's really, like I said, not really indicative overall of where my voice is now. Actually, I'm singing some other songs that are well above that. It's just you find that with singing that there's just some songs, depending on the breathing and the phrasing, the words and the vowels and everything, they could be lower in your range, but they're harder to sing because of certain things. It's really interesting. Maureen says, you don't know that song? Thanks. I'm now in the middle rabbit hole of the girl in the car. I'm wondering which girl in car you're talking about, D. But how many of you, just let's do a little poll. How many of you are familiar with the song When You Close Your Eyes by Night Ranger? When you close your eyes, do you dream about me? When you close your eyes, do you dream about me? How many of you are familiar with that song? I'm wondering. It was a very popular song back in 83, 84. Maureen, did you get my email regarding Travis Decker? Yeah, in fact, I'm going to talk about it tonight, Maureen. Thank you. DD, you're familiar with the song? Very good. Oh, the girl, yeah, the girl who got chopped up and put in the Tesla. Yeah, all right, D. Loved Ranger. I'm not from... Wait, you love Night Ranger, Lisa? Folk music, banjo music, Lisa? All right. Stephanie, I've never heard of this song. Well, looks like Night Ranger is going to be getting some additional downloads on Spotify. Rockford remembers it. GS does not. Oh, yes, great song. Nurse remembers it. Yeah, that's the song. Night Ranger, Jack Blades, Kelly Keegi. We're in that band. In fact, Kelly Keegi was a drummer who sang. In fact, he sings that song. Jack Blades was also a singer in that group, and then he went on to be in Damn Yankees with Tommy Shaw, Ted Nugent. So there you go. So I'm going to start working on that song. My guess is probably we'll figure that one out between myself and my instructor pretty quickly. She'll hear me sing it, and she's a big 80s music fan, so she surely knows it. And so then we'll move on to something else, but it's going to be interesting. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you're wondering about how I'm singing and what the first song is I'm going to sing to you one of these days, it might just be that one. We'll just have to see. All right, let's move on. Let's get to the meat of this show tonight. And I like the music that you like too. All right, Lisa, just checking. I went backstage, Damn Yankees, Bad Company in yeah, that would be about 1990. Yeah, Bad Company, when the original singer wasn't with them anymore. Yeah, they were doing There's no smoke without a fire, there's no heat without a flame. That Bad Company. Marcus says, I'm not familiar with that particular song of Night Ranger. Of course, they do Sister Christian. They do Don't Tell Me You Love Me. They do Sentimental Street. You Can Still Rock in America. But I think When You Close Your Eyes is my favorite song by them. I have a sister of a missing kid who's looking for help, and I was asked about you. Well, that's nice of somebody to ask, D. All right, let's talk about, or I'll talk, you can listen, you can, of course, I want comments on this as well. The disappearance of Ray Gricar. Very well-known disappearance. I don't know if it rises to the level of Mara Murray or Brian Schaefer, Jennifer Kesse, but it's certainly up there. It's 20 years old. A lot of speculation regarding his disappearance. Even some connections a few years later when Jerry Sandusky, the Penn State football coach, he went to jail for abusing boys. Did Ray's disappearance have something to do with that? It's been a disappeared episode. So I want to finally make some official comments on it. But once again, not going to get too deep into the theorizing. Just going to look at it. Questions that come to my head. I'm going to read part of the Charlie Project page on it, and then just do some things that pop into my head. And of course, I take notes. I do notes for all of this. D, I told them to reach out. It's a cold case. All right, D. Who is this above you? Stephanie's heard of Sister Christian, right? Sister Christian, great tune. Marcus, Rockin' America album, Midnight Madness. Yes, right. Midnight Madness, right? D. There was a really good podcast about Ray, but the last episode was never released. Really, D? Really? They never finished it? Really? Well, that's weird. All right, D. I didn't know that. Thank you for telling me. Maybe you could find out what the name of, how long ago was that, DD? I'd like to know a little bit more about that if, you can remember. All right, Ray. Ray was last seen on April 15th, tax day, of 2005 in Bellefonte, Pennsylvania. He took a half day off from work and left his place of employment driving his 2004 Mini Cooper, which is red with a white top and a vanity license plate. A photograph of the vehicle is posted with this case summary. Ray called his longtime girlfriend, Patty Fornicola, on his cellular phone at 11:30 a.m. and said he was driving northeast on Route 192 toward Lewisburg in Union County, Pennsylvania. You should know, even though I'm from Pennsylvania, only ever went to this area of Pennsylvania once, and that was like 1987 or something. He never arrived home, and Fornicola reported him missing at 11:30 p.m. that same day. There's been no activity on his cellular phone, email, bank accounts, or credit cards since his disappearance. Ray had been the Center County District Attorney. Center County is where Penn State University is. He had been the district attorney there for 20 years and had decided to retire in December, so like 9 months from then, and not seek re-election. He is described as a hardworking and dedicated lawyer. He was involved in some high-profile cases, but authorities stated that no threats had been made against him, and they did not believe his disappearance had anything to do with his job. His loved ones reported that he felt overworked and fatigued before he went missing. He was so exhausted that Fornicola suggested he see a doctor, but apparently he did not do so. The day after Ray vanished, his car was found in a dirt parking lot on the outskirts of Lewisburg in Union County, near the Susquehanna River, 45 miles east of his Bellefonte home. There was no sign of him at the scene and no signs of foul play. But cigarette ashes were found inside the vehicle, his Mini Cooper. And Ray disliked cigarette smoke and would be unlikely to allow someone to smoke in his car. I'll come back to that. Ray's cellular phone was locked inside the vehicle, and a water bottle was also found. Ray's DNA was on the bottle, indicating he drank from it. The Mini Cooper's keys were missing and have never been found. An antique store was close by, and its proprietor thought Ray might have been in his shop that day, but this has never been confirmed. The store owner said the man he saw appeared to be waiting for someone. Ray is interested in antiques and has been to that store before. None of Ray's luggage, clothing, or other belongings were found to be missing from the home he shared with Fornicola, but his county-issued laptop, computer, and sunglasses disappeared with him. The laptop's case and power source were left behind, I guess at home or in his office. In late July 2005, so like 3 months later, Ray's laptop was found by fishermen in the Susquehanna River, lodged against a bridge support several hundred yards from where his car had been found. It was determined that the hard drive had been removed before the computer was thrown in the water. Investigators stated the computer had been in the river for a long time, possibly since the time Ray vanished. His family said he did not normally take the laptop with him on trips. In late October 2005, so then 6 months after the disappearance, his computer hard drive was found on the banks of the Susquehanna River. The hard drive was so badly damaged, however, that investigators were unable to obtain any clues from it. They later discovered that before his disappearance, someone had done searches on Gricar's home computer for how to wreck a hard drive and water damage to a notebook computer. Curiously, Ray's brother, Ray Gricar, disappeared under similar circumstances in Dayton, Ohio in May 1996. He told his wife he was going out to buy mulch and never returned. Later, his body was pulled from the Great Miami River. Roy's drowning was ruled a suicide. Authorities investigated the possibility that Ray suffered from depression and took his own life as his brother did, but there is no evidence to support this theory. Now, of course, if you're not familiar with this disappearance, of course, after you read all that, you can see why at least some people have taken an interest in his disappearance, maybe more than the average disappearance out there. I will tell you that I've known about his disappearance for a long time. I've certainly seen the Disappeared episode, although I've certainly not seen it recently. I don't remember ever over the years looking at a Google map or anything like that. Certainly read some stories about his disappearance. Maybe there have been some blogs over the years, maybe web sleuths or something. But I cannot say that this is a disappearance over the years, the last 20 years, that got, a bunch of my attention. Really, really, really wondering, going down rabbit holes or anything. Not really. By comparison, Jody Huisentruit, before I started Unfound, was much more on my mind. Even the murder of Dan Markel, I would say I took more interest in that than I did in Ray's disappearance, just as a comparison. Let's see, DD, it's been a little bit. I have to look at the podcast that I follow and get back to you. That's fine, DD. Anytime is fine. That's fine. That's fine. D said, I did a trivia question on this case. I think I remember that, D. Thank you. So here are the items that catch my eye, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you these are mind-blowing or anything. I think maybe there have been some other ones where, reading between the lines, given that this is my work, I might notice it more than the average person. But, a lot of these I think are pretty straight, pretty obvious things. I'm not claiming that I'm some genius by saying some of these things. So the points that catch my eye, the biggest one would be the search for a way to destroy the hard drive. And it was on his home computer. It was not on, they didn't put that, as it states there, they did not put that laptop computer all back together and then get it to run and then found the search on that computer. This was done on Ray's, I guess it would be a desktop at home, or maybe he had another laptop at home. I don't know. But it was at the computer that was still all in one piece that still worked at his apartment or home that had this search on it. Now, what would be interesting for me to know is, well, when was this search done? Was it the day before? Was it a year before? I think that matters. I don't know how much it matters, but I think conceptually, at least in the context of all of this, understanding when that search was done would be helpful. Was it done at like in the evening, or was he up at like 3 a.m? Because as you know, I mean, all of you are, I'm going to guess, are fairly computer literate. If you're listening to podcasts, then you're fairly computer literate. You know, you do a search, of course, it gets saved. Of course, you can wipe your history out or whatever. But it's going to give you the date. It's going to give you the time. It'll show if you've searched for a particular term over and over and over. And that's like one of the reasons that, of course, a lot of true crime people, you know, joke around, man, if the police ever come and check my computer for what I'm searching for, they're going to think I'm a serial killer. Me too. I do a lot of weird searches with the work that I do. I know how these people feel. So it would certainly lead me to believe that this was not somebody else who did a search, unless you're going to tell me that multiple people had access to this computer. I mean, obviously he lived with a woman in his life. Maybe she did the search. I mean, that, you know, but if you're going to tell me that multiple people had access to the computer, then maybe I might start thinking, well, where were they on the day Ray went missing? But I've not ever read anything about that. It seems it was just the two of them living together. And somebody breaking in to do a search like that is just a little too crazy for me. So we just have to acknowledge that the computer and the hard drive were found destroyed, and that before he went missing on his home computer, he had done a search about destroying a hard drive or destroying it in water or something like that. I would really like to know. I realize it's just like a couple variations on that search. I really would like to know how many variations of that search he did. And of course, a search like that, the computer would also, of course, note what did he search before and after that. I guess what we're also saying, though, is if there were any searches about committing suicide, either it hasn't been mentioned publicly or it wasn't done, which I think is noteworthy. So then we have to start thinking, he did this search, how to destroy a computer. If he was planning on going missing, Ray would certainly be smart enough to know that somebody would probably go check his computer and see his activity. Would he actually want them to find out that he had actually been doing a search on destroying a computer? I know that's very confusing to think about, but this is what you have to do in disappearances. You have to kind of work backwards from things. I think Ray could have accurately predicted that he goes missing. If he was planning to go missing, whether it was suicide or whatever else, he would know that his computer is going to get checked. That he made no effort to delete his search history or his browsing history or anything, I think that's noteworthy. I think, let's see what everybody's saying to this point. Rockford, how you doing, Rockford? Worth mentioning that Gricar consulted on a book called 2020 Vision, in which a character disappears in a similar manner to how Ray did, including cigarettes in the car. The book connection might not sway me much, but I can't dismiss it given the missing heart, laptop, as being as so anti-smoking, and the fact he was such a private person. When did that book come out? Did it sell well? Who was the author? Have you read that book? How much? And I don't think I'm giving her, as you would probably suspect, Rockford is not his real name. I know what his real name is. It's none of your business. But being that you're in the same profession, Rockford, is this like a law book, a mystery book? Have you read it? That might all be helpful. All right. So we have to just accept Ray did this search. And it very well may be, as Rockford's pointing out, maybe he only did it because he was consulting on this book. Maybe. And that's why I'd like to know a little bit more about, was he searching for anything else around that time? We don't know. Now, moving on, the family history is something that, well, is it a coincidence or not? coincidence or not, that his brother seemingly committed suicide. That's, of course, what police ultimately decided. There's nothing that I've heard to think otherwise. I don't know what his brother did for work. I don't know what was going on in his brother's life. Did he have depression? Did he have mental health issues? Did he have addictions? I have no idea. I've not looked any of that up. But I think I can say, even though I'm not a psychologist, I only play one on this live show, that I think that if you have somebody in your family who has committed suicide, I think it is more likely that somebody else might commit suicide. I think that's what the stats say, the studies say, I think. Now, why that is, I don't know. But I think that's true. So, being that his brother seemingly committed suicide, it does make it more likely that Ray would have done that. I don't know how much it raises the odds, though. But a lot of people do believe that happened. Of course, a lot of people believe that he was murdered. A lot of different theories out there. But certainly suicide is something that needs to be considered. So we might think of, well, he was planning to go the way his brother did. And because he did sensitive work, he didn't want anybody to get their hands on that laptop. So he's going into the river, and the laptop is going into the river with him. I don't know why he couldn't just wipe the memory or something. And certainly there have been people who have brought up, well, was he wiping the memory? Did he want to destroy that computer? Were there sensitive files on it? Was he into child porn? Well, I don't know. I have no idea. But of course, we think about a disappearance like Joshua Guimond. There's been a lot made about his computer. In fact, that podcast that was a couple years ago, and multiple episodes made a lot of a very big deal about his computer, and things got erased, and making fake IDs, and who was using his computer, and all of that. That's the 21st century for you. So the family history is something that has to be considered. And that's not a topic, I have to say, that comes up too much in unfound disappearances, where somebody goes missing, and what is the family history of something like that? It's fairly rare, but certainly it's something to consider for Rays. I would also say that my perception, at least for that day, talking to his girlfriend, even though I realize she's a grown woman, they still call it boyfriend, girlfriend. It seems he was a little vague about his destination that day. I realize this is just the Charlie Project account, and it could be written differently in different places. He said he was driving northeast on Route 192 toward Lewisburg in Union County. And I guess he didn't say where he was going. I mean, we do know that his car ended up where it ended up. But did he just give his girlfriend Patty the impression that he was just going for a drive? Oh, yeah, I'm just out here driving around. I'm really not doing anything. I'm just clearing my head. Just had a bad morning. Or did he actually have a destination in mind? It's unclear. It's unclear on that. It just, the way I've read it, multiple places over the years, it does seem like it was a little vague. I'm not saying he was being evasive with the woman in his life, but it sure does seem like it. So it's something to consider. Of course, if he said, that he was driving to Pittsburgh, and then he ends up, still out there in the center of Pennsylvania with his car, then that's something really, 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 weird. And of course, on the other, if he said he was, oh, honey, I'll be home in 15 minutes, and he doesn't get there, and his car ends up at where it ended up, that would certainly be something as well. Don't know. Moving on. Family said he was overworked and fatigued. This is always a bad sign. Was he taking some sort of medication for this? Something that comes to mind. Was he depressed, not in a suicidal way, but were things not going well at work? We know that he was not going to be seeking re-election or whatever they do for district attorneys, stepping down from that position. Was he going to be retiring? Was he going to stay a lawyer? I don't know. but he was overworked and fatigued, as I think a lot of lawyers are. So I don't know how much that means, but if they're going to say it, then I'm going to believe it. And of course, Ray's the one who went missing. Now, you should know, maybe Rockford knows this anyway, lawyers do have a higher rate of suicide than the general population, if you were wondering. Lawyers, for whatever reason, maybe because, I don't know, because they're arguing all the time, all those contracts, I don't know, dealing with clients, I don't know, trying to get the billable hours. But I think that's true that lawyers have a higher rate of suicide than the general population. So that's something to consider. And then as far as the eyewitnesses, over the years, I've read accounts where some people said that he was with a woman in this antique shop, or he was by himself, or he was sitting out in his car. And there was, a lot of different stories regarding this. They surely all cannot be true. And we know about eyewitness accounts. And without really scientific evidence of it, I'm usually inclined, as you know, to really dismiss all of them. And as we've all learned, who knows when these people were even asked about Ray's disappearance? You don't even know. So I'm not saying that information can't be gotten, but if it was even a week later, it might as well be a year later. So it very well could be that, yes, this person who runs this antique store had seen Ray before, but it might have been a totally different day. So I wouldn't get caught up too deeply in the eyewitness stuff. Let me see what everybody is saying here. Stephanie, I have heard that even the mention of the act can increase the chances of a struggling person making an attempt at suicide. Okay, Stephanie, thank you. Rockford, 1990 by Pamela West. It's science fiction, not a well-known book. 2020 Vision. All right, Rockford. Okay. Anybody read that book? Maybe the key to this disappearance is in the book. Rockford, I believe it was a fictionalized account of the real-life murder of a Penn State student in the 60s. I'll send you a link to a source or two. Thank you, Rockford. Then what about those cigarette ashes? Well, there's some things we need to consider here. Even if he was a neat freak, when was the last time he vacuumed his car out? No. We also don't know. It very well be that he could have been parked there and had the windows down and somebody was, the ashes were blowing into the car or something. I'm not saying I necessarily like any of those explanations. It very well could be that somebody else who was a smoker was in the car and Ray was there. And if he was so anti-smoking, what was going on? It's hard to say. This is, once again, this is one of those things where I'm not necessarily saying it's not true, but are we sure that these were cigarette ashes? Did they actually, as you know, I probably wouldn't have been this way 15 years ago, but now doing Unfound for 9 years, here's what I think I know. Police surely did not scientifically check to make sure those were cigarette ashes. Pretty sure. Just like I'm pretty sure they didn't do any forensics on the car, as we keep hearing over and over and over and over. So were these really cigarette ashes, or were they different kind of ashes? And could they have gotten in there a different way? Could he have been talking to somebody wherever he was earlier that morning, and the ashes got in there and he didn't even realize it? I realize a lot of people think, well, that must have meant somebody else was driving the vehicle. Would somebody really do that? You're stealing a car, you're killing a lawyer or whatever else, and you're going to smoke in the car, and leave ashes there. I mean, if you know Ray, that to do this, it very well may be that this killer would know that Ray was anti-smoking. Like I said, I don't have a very good answer for it, but I have to admit, I really question whether these were cigarette ashes or something that just looked like cigarette ashes, in addition to the fact we don't know how long those ashes were there. It very well may be that they were in, if they were on like the passenger side of the car, like between the seat and the door or wherever, they might have been there forever and Ray never saw them because he's, driving the car by himself. I mean, me as a single guy and not really hardly ever driving anybody else around, it's amazing how things end up between the seat and the passenger's door in the front seat. Something slides over there, goes off the other side, and I'm like, where'd it go? And then, oh, yeah, it's, you have to open up the other door. So, whereas if you're a couple or what, if you had kids and somebody's always getting in on the passenger side, they're more likely to notice things like that. Something to consider. Marcus, I would think they would have done forensic in the car with him being the DA. Well, you would think, Marcus, but yeah, I get what you're saying, Marcus. The problem is we've covered so many disappearances where nothing was done with abandoned vehicles. And if never or very much later, like with, Tom Brown. Despite all that, no forensics done. A lot of criticism for the sheriff's office for not doing that. But I think we just have to generally remember that for abandoned cars and disappearances, no forensics are done unless there's signs of violence or the car has been wrecked or something like that. If it's just parked there locked, probably not. Probably not. So, is this foul play? Well, then what, the thing is, then what exactly are we considering here? If this were foul play, we have to remember this is out in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania. This is not Pittsburgh. This is not Philadelphia. It's not Harrisburg. It's not Erie. This is really out in the middle of the Allegheny Mountains of Pennsylvania, beautiful part of the state. I didn't live there, but are we saying that he happened to pawn and, he got carjacked and he just happened to do a search for destroying a computer in the water and then that's what happens? It seems unlikely. It really, really seems unlikely. Now, some people have said, well, it could be with Jerry Sandusky. That, that's something to do with that, and maybe covered up information, or maybe he ran interference for Jerry Sandusky. I have not seen any evidence of that at all. Zero. Certainly the timing is interesting. I could even imagine that Jerry Sandusky and Ray Gricar probably ran into each other at least once or twice. Both being in Center County and him being the DA and Jerry Sandusky being probably part of the football program. And I'm sure Ray Gricar met Joe Paterno and a lot of the famous Penn State football players who went on to play in the NFL and everything else. I mean, it's Center County is Penn State University. If Penn State University wasn't there, Center County might only have 100 people in it. So that's certainly possible, but the fact is a lot of people knew Jerry Sandusky and certainly did not know what he was doing. And so we just can't say, well, because Ray was in that position and knew Jerry Sandusky that it had anything to do with that. We realize that when we think of child porn and abuse, we automatically think of computers because that's how a lot of these people get caught. But I don't know in 2005 terms how relevant that was as it is today. And in fact, I think when it comes to Jerry Sandusky, it was just everything that he did in person. Did he have child porn or something on his computer? I really don't remember. Was he trading? Was he going into the dark web, the 2005 or whatever Jerry Sandusky was doing his stuff? Was he going into the dark web and sharing naked photos of little boys or something? I don't know. So the connection seems very, very thin to me. Now, did Ray have another woman in his life, or maybe even a man in his life, and he was going to meet that person there, and that's why he wanted to destroy the computer, because maybe somebody was extorting him for money and everything? Could be. Then why was it that Ray ended up dead? Or went missing? What exactly transpired out there? Nothing that I've heard. I know a lot of speculation, but and we do know, a lot of people cheating out there, and maybe that's the reason that he was vague with his girlfriend of where he was going. But it does seem he was telling the truth. He was on that road, so he wasn't lying to her. He might have just been vague. I don't know, but I think when he said he was on that particular road, that's where he was. Will he do that if he was cheating on her and was going to meet another woman? It seems unlikely if he was going to meet someone else. But carjacked, once again, it comes back to how would somebody know that he was doing a search for destroying his computer in the water, and then then get carjacked, and then the computer actually does end up in the water. Hard to understand. Now, maybe he threw the computer in the water, was coming back to his car, and something happened. I guess that's possible. I guess and then that person threw him into the water. Maybe that's what happened. I guess there are no facts to dispute that. So now I want to move on to, there's been a lot of speculation. What is it about this particular disappearance that, has gotten so much attention for it? What I would say, what makes it almost like to the level of Maura Murray or Jennifer Cassier? What is it? Probably because he was a DA, in a big college town in Pennsylvania. That certainly has something to do with it. I think that, of course, his car being left behind, and then the computer actually being in the water, I think this really does start adding to the sensationalism of his disappearance. You add in Jerry Sandusky. In fact, we might even think that if Jerry Sandusky does not happen, it very well could be that this disappearance of Ray ever gets close to being well known everywhere, and it doesn't become a disappeared episode, whatever. I also think that the drama has to do with the over-reliance on witnesses. Like I said before, there are people who said he might have been with a woman, he was doing this, he was doing that. Not a lot of agreement, what I would say. Like, you can read like 2 or 3 or 4 different versions of Ray by his car that day, but people start thinking, well, maybe he was meeting another woman, or he was meeting somebody with his computer, and then they find out he was planning to destroy his computer. Was he meeting some pedophile? That adds to it. Once again, I think the witness, that all brings that into, raising the dramatic level. I think also because people love a good conspiracy. They want to think, well, what if the DA in Center County, Pennsylvania knew all about Jerry Sandusky, but he was covering it up because he didn't want the football team to be damaged? Because some will say that Joe Paterno, that's exactly what he did. He knew about Jerry Sandusky and looked the other way. Of course, most Penn State fans don't believe that. I personally do believe that. So there's that. I think also there's been drama, ignorance of how many people really do walk off. as we now know on Unfound, many for all sorts of reasons, mental health reasons, suicide reasons, all sorts of reasons. Ignorance of searches, people think, well, he's all searched for all over the place and couldn't find them. Well, when you have a river there, that's always going to be complex, always. I think that people not understanding how searches work and how much they fail adds to the drama on this. And then also, I don't think if we're to look at the suicidal route, people don't realize that sometimes suicidal people make the decision on the spur of the moment. In fact, I would say that even though going back to this Friday with Ian Rogers, I personally do not believe that he committed suicide. But I do believe that there's a good possibility that he made that decision to do whatever he did at the last moment. People really aren't sure about what they're going to do until a particular moment when the situation is correct. So I think that's why Ray's disappearance has become as well known as it is, even though he was just some, older white guy out in the hills of Pennsylvania, when really, of course, a lot of these disappearances that get attention, of course, I think Jennifer Kesse, because of the way she looked. I think Maura Murray, a combination of her looks and all the other things she had going on in her life at the time, breaking law, even though she had this perception of being this, fine young woman, she's breaking the law, using somebody else's credit card, etc. I think that added to that. Brian Schaefer, it's because he wasn't seen on the video, I think. Going back to Brandon Lawson, of course, his disappearance is now solved. I think it's just because of the phone call and people heard what they wanted to hear. Jody Huisentruit, it's because she was a local celebrity and somebody was really waited there for an hour for her to come out of her apartment, even though she was late and somebody still attacked her. We could see these things with Ray's. I think it's a combination of things that, it's a mixture of things that has put this disappearance on a lot of people's radar. Whereas my general idea is a lot of older white guys going missing, generally does not get a lot of attention unless the facts and everything are really, really wacky. I would not say that Rays are very, very unusual. We talk a lot about computers. We talk a lot about water. We talk a lot about abandoned cars. We talk a lot about people walking off and everything. So let's see what everybody had to say. Rockford says, also interesting that his net worth was much lower than one would expect, which has led to all sorts of speculation and questions. That's new to me, Rockford. What I would say to that, once again, is no. Did he have any ex-wives? I don't think he had any kids. I don't think. Did he have any ex-wives? We have to remember that he was a district attorney. He was a public servant. He was not working in private practice with his name on the sign, and he was getting a piece of all the others working and could just hang out while he just earned other people's billable hours and everything else. We really have to put this in the context. Yes, he was a lawyer. Yes, he was a district attorney, but he was not the district attorney in, he wasn't Jack McCoy on Law and Order, or Fred Thompson, I guess technically was the district attorney. He wasn't Fred Thompson or whoever else who played that role in Law and Order. He was the district attorney in Center County, Pennsylvania, out in the middle of nowhere. So how much does a person like that make? And my idea regarding lawyers, no offense, Rockford, is, this is written about in the book. What is that? How to Be a Millionaire? Book came out like 30 years ago or something like that. And you just have to remember certain professions, there is a perception on, what these types of people should be driving and where they should be living and everything. And some of these people don't make as much money as the rest of everybody thinks they make, but they feel like they have to do that. So They may join that golf club, country club they really maybe can't afford. And they may buy that car that they maybe probably, if they were a teacher, they wouldn't think about buying it at all. It's kind of like in the real estate business. You don't want your real estate agent pulling up in a 2016 Hyundai Sonata like I drive that has 130,000 miles on it. I think that's what I'm saying. So just some things that I keep in mind when it comes to net worth and everything. Rockford, his brother Roy died after jumping into the Ohio, right? Oops, off a bridge in the Ohio, yeah. The Great Miami River in Ohio. Yeah, Ray had an adopted daughter. Okay, thank you, Rockford. So we just don't know. Just because he was a lawyer does not mean he was good with his money. That happens. There are a lot of people who don't make a lot of money, but are spectacular at saving money and being smart. And then a lot of people that make a lot of money and don't know how to manage it. Like Patrick Ewing once said, we make a lot of money, but we spend a lot of money. It's famous. I have to believe, I have to say, I am not convinced that this is a suicide. It very well may be. And I certainly would not criticize or look sideways at somebody who said so. I think that we would understand this disappearance a whole heck of a lot better if we knew why he did a search for destroying a computer in water. If he wanted to destroy it in water, why didn't he just put it in the bathtub? Hard to understand. In addition, it's hard to understand who has ever thought if you do have like a company laptop or something and you're leaving that company, you have to turn the laptop in. Are you really thinking about destroying the hard drive or something like that? Probably not. So it would lead you to believe that there could have been something on the laptop that he didn't want anybody to see. But then if that's the truth, well, then we do have to start looking at foul play because he might have been getting extorted. Maybe. He doesn't have to drive the whole way to the Susquehanna River to destroy it. And in fact, what I would say is, if he doesn't go missing, how is he going to explain not having his computer anymore? How is he going to explain that? Hard to say. And so I guess what I'm saying is that it very well may be that, when we look at Ray's disappearance, we're looking at it in too narrow a vision. We are only looking at it for that day. Remember, as I continue to say, disappearances aren't just one moment. They're usually a series of events and choices and decisions and words and everything piling, getting together. And then the disappearance happens. And in fact, we have certainly covered many disappearances on Unfound that started weeks, if not months, before the person ever went missing. And so that's why I would like to know, when he did this search about destroying his computer, when did that happen? I think what I'm going to say in this is I don't think this was necessarily suicide the way you would usually explain it. I think if this were suicide, he was just depressed. Of course, his brother did what he did. Then he wouldn't have been doing these searches for destroying a computer. And I don't think so. He would have just gone over there and jumped into the river. And I guess that would be that. I don't know, how deep and fast the Susquehanna is. I think that Ray Gricar was having some sort of mental health issue. I think that doing a search about destroying the hard drive of a computer that you have to turn back in is overtly protective. If he was worried about that, I don't know. I don't know what was on the computer. Maybe nothing. But he thought something was on the computer. He could have bought another new hard drive for it. He could have removed that hard drive and put another one in there. No problem. A blank one. And I don't think anybody would have ever known the difference. Probably easy to do. I mean, I've done all sorts of operations on my laptops over the years. Just a couple screws here and there. Take the hard drive out, put a new one in. It's blank. Here's the computer. Boom. I wonder if he was going through some sort of health crisis like paranoia, schizophrenia, something like that. And he actually thought that somebody was after him. And he thought that there was something on his computer. And that he thought that somebody was following him. And I continue to believe that, and I think I've said this a couple times maybe in this or on the live show. We have to remember that people can be crazy. I know I'm no scientist, crazy, but not show signs of it until you happen upon certain topics. You can be having a conversation with somebody about, anything, and then you bring up, you're talking about cooking chicken wings and going to see Night Ranger or whatever, and then you happen upon the weather, and then the person says, "Oh yeah, the UFO, the aliens are really doing a great job with the weather today." There are people like that. There are many thousands, if not millions, of people like that. What we generally think of as mental health issues, we think of people walking around the streets and screaming into the sky and everything. It's not like that always. I remember like in my 7-Eleven days, there was a couple who ran the 7-Eleven store at Eastern and Sunset Drive, Eastern Sunset. And they were known as like being the nicest people around. But if you went into the back part of the store, where they do all the accounting, where the bathroom is and everything else, they would have stuff wrapped in tinfoil because they thought the government was like beaving in messages and reading their minds and stuff. That's a true story. I think that's what was going on with Ray. And that's how he ended up over there thinking he was being followed, being stalked or whatever. And said, I got to destroy this computer. These people, they want this computer and I have to figure out a way to get rid of it. And I'm going to throw it in the river. And it very well may be that in the course of throwing it into the river, he got washed away. I know that's going to be maybe a shock to some of you, but I think that's where I am on this. He said he was overworked. He was depressed. He's going off. He doesn't tell her, the woman in his life where he's going. He's doing a search on destroying a computer for seemingly no reason. That sounds like mental health issues to me. Not necessarily suicidal mental health issues, but we don't know what reality he was seeing that day. We just take for granted because he was driving and ended up at a place that he normally went, this antique store that he was in his right mind. Doesn't mean anything. That's why disappearances are so tough. What you often hear about the case is that it's hard to believe he could do that to his family, and circumstances appear to mirror what his brother did to himself. Mental health could explain it. Well, surely mental health runs in people's families. Suicide probably probably a lesser extent, but mental health issues absolutely do. Good point. George, would really like to see Ed's analysis on the Brandon Swanson case one day. How about I put that on my list for next week, George? Would that be good? I could do that. I could do that next week, George. That's no problem. Good one. Thank you. Good to see you, by the way, tonight, George. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. So that's Ray Gricar. Maybe an unusual, not sure how many of you could have predicted that I was going to choose that. as where I went tonight, then I'm thinking so. I really am thinking so. I think this is a mental health he wasn't suicidal in that very logical way. It's his mental health that brought him to a spot where he killed himself, maybe even by accident. That's all I got. Of course, as new facts pop up, new theories pop up. And I might be doing this live show 10 years from now, and new things have popped up, and I'll have to change my mind. But 20 years in, that's where I am. All right, some other things going on. Of course, the Ian Rogers poll. I want to once again thank Alyssa and Michael for appearing. I do hope that they can have the kind of success with their podcast that Unfound has had. 500 episodes in. I'm hoping that they can get to 500 some episodes as well. In the discussion group, I put the poll in there, a variety of choices. Will Ian and the truck be found on land together, in the water together? Will one be on land and the other in water? Will one be on land, water and the other one on land? And 37% of the people who responded to the poll said both Ian and the truck would be found in water. But 31%, pretty close. And in fact, one of the other choices was 20-some%. So this is kind of one of the most even polls that we've had in quite a while. 37% said both in water, but 31% said both on land. Now, in the think tank last night, once again, patreon.com/unfound podcast. If you'd like to take part, George and Rockford, among other people you see in the chat, are in there, and I know they all love it. We really didn't get we did talk about water and land, and that I really did not break it down like that in a poll kind of situation as myself running the think tank. I would say that probably 50-50. I think that would be a very close in the think tank. Of course, think tank fairly small. It's supposed to be that way. 6, 7, 8 people. Kind of 4 and 4, 4 and 3, 3 and 4, something like that, going one way or the other. Me, I have to tell you, and I told this to Alyssa and Michael. I don't mind telling you. But I do the blog there, once again, $2 a month at patreon.com/unfound podcast. It's like getting another podcast every week. I am very open to the idea that Ian is still alive. And I don't say that just to be nice. This disappearance is only a year old. There was nothing that I heard to think that Ian was suicidal or that he was having a mental health issue. It seems he was maybe a little depressed. He certainly had an addiction. Certainly sounds like he was worthy of being given that truck for his job. Too much responsibility, too much commitment, and everything else. But that does not make somebody suicidal. And I've made the point that although addicts do kill themselves, they don't commit suicide as much as you might think. They die because of an accident, not because they took drugs to kill themselves. Maybe the best example, like Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue. He was doing heroin, passed out, woke up, and the needle was still in his arm and all of that. If he had died right there, that's not suicide. Now, he is killing himself, I guess, figuratively, I guess. Of course, he's still alive. But that wouldn't have been a suicide. He was just getting high. I think he really did want to live to the next day. It's just he wanted to be high the next day. So I don't think it's automatic. You just think, well, he was down and this and that, and so Ian committed suicide. I don't see that at all. So I'm thinking he still might be alive. And in fact, I'll even go as far to say it would not surprise me at all if he's still driving that truck around somewhere just not in Florida. I gave the example of when I moved to Las Vegas, I had a Dodge Ram Charger that I drove with a Pennsylvania license plate, and eventually the tag expired. I moved there in 1998. I didn't get ticketed I got ticketed for an illegal U-turn or something, but no police officer ever said anything to me about that expired Pennsylvania license plate until like 2000 or 2001. I went like 2 or 3 years living there with an expired Pennsylvania license plate in Nevada before I had to change it to a Nevada plate. So this is kind of in my mind with Ian Rogers. So I would urge you to be very hopeful that Ian is still alive out there somewhere, and he can be found just like Brandon Roberts was. Yeah, you did miss that, D. Rockford. Meant to mention that your guest did a nice job on the consult too, with a different case. Love the tank. Join us. George is a fantastic addition to the crew. He is. Maureen, I can't imagine him driving his boss's truck into water. Well, he could have, certainly, Maureen, but it's not my favorite choice. I think that I certainly imagine it. It's just not choice 1, 2, or 3. Yeah, thank you, Maureen. Maureen agrees with me. Maureen is very smart. What else? Sounds like I'm going to be on A&E again. I got an email from them last week, and we're going to be having a Zoom meeting, not next Monday, I think 2 weeks. We're going to have a Zoom call. I think they're going to be doing something about runaways. And I guess my appearance on A&E, when was that? In August, when that came out? I forgot I was on that show. The one with Dan Abrams. I totally forgot about it because it was like 2 years ago. I guess they must have liked my appearance. So they emailed me and want to talk to me about, I guess they're doing a show on runaways, which of course are a kind of disappearance. I said, sure, let's talk. So I'll let you know how that goes, but that's not going to be for, like I said, 2 weeks. Also, part 2 of my talk with Jason Blair over at the Silver Linings Handbook podcast came out last week. I've listened to it a couple times. I would not change a word. Thought it went really well. I think I made all the points that I needed to make. And I just love being invited. I thought we had a great talk. And parts 1 and 2 are now available. 2 hours that I spent with him went so fast, talking about Native American disappearances, and ready to do that anytime soon. Maureen, Washington State is like that too. I just saw a truck from Louisiana with tags from 2008. Yeah, exactly, Maureen. Thank you for making my point for me. So, yeah, Silver Linings Handbook. I don't know if you're subscribed, if you listen to that podcast with Jason Blair or not, but at the very least, go listen to parts 1 and 2. I am my usual informative, interesting, funny self. Moving on, Travis Decker. Remember, that was an Unfound now from maybe 4 months ago. He was the guy who killed his daughters, and then there was this big manhunt for him. You go back and find that Unfound now right on here on this YouTube channel. You will see at the end that I say, I think when he's caught, I didn't know I was really ready to say whether he was alive or not. But I made the point, I'm pretty sure he's still in the area. I was right. I was right, and they measured it out. He was 3/4 of a mile away. His remains, he was dead. He was 3/4 of a mile away from where he murdered his daughters. Now, you may ask me, well, how could you have predicted that? I mean, they were looking all over the state. They were looking in other states. They were looking, there are all these sightings all over the United States. And then I roll in like 2 months after that happened. And at the end of the video, I say, yeah, I just think he's right there nearby. Now, I don't know if I could have said it was a 3/4 of a mile or whether he'd be alive or not, but it just gave me the idea he was still close. Why? how could I say that? Did I just get lucky, or was it something else? First of all, if you don't remember, he did do a search before he did all this about going to Mexico, going to Canada, getting out of the country, because, of course, these killings of his daughters was pre-planned. It wasn't something he did on the spur of the moment. My thinking was that people like to get away with their crimes, especially fathers who kill their children. And he would have to know that when he goes and he kills his daughters and he's going to be on the run, that they're going to go check his computers to see if he did any searches. He knows that. He may be a monster, but he's not stupid. So it seemed unlikely to me that he would actually do whatever searches he did on the computer. That doesn't sound very smart if you actually want to get away with murder. So that's why I rejected it. Very simple. Simple thing. People don't like to get caught. Don't like to get caught. They would rather, of course, we know these mass shootings, schools, Las Vegas, these people end up killing themselves. Like I said, they don't like to get caught. So that was part of my thinking. I was also thinking, I was very open to the idea that killing somebody is not, my perception, for a lot of people, is not the relief that people think it is. Oh, if I could just kill this person, man, it's going to be great, and I'm going to get away with it, everything. And certainly that happens. But we do have to remember that Travis Decker, those daughters were his. They were born at different times. I'm guessing that he wanted to have those kids, and something just went wrong with him. Was it a custody battle or whatever? And he killed these daughters. Monster, complete monster. But I also, on the other hand, this is so, I think, hard for some people to understand, is that I'm also under the belief, though, that Travis Decker at one time did love those daughters. And we also have to remember that some parents do kill their kids because they love it. It's so distorted, but they can't be around them anymore. They're going to restrict it on their custody, whatever else. And they start thinking, well, if I'm not going to be here, then the kids shouldn't be here, and I don't trust my ex-wife, and all these things. And there was a part of me that thought, I'm guessing that Travis Decker doesn't get the relief from killing his daughters that he thought he was going to get. That I didn't think that he was going to kill them and then just be so happy about it. So be loosey, footloose, fancy free, and then go running off and hide from the cops for the next 50 years. And I was open to the idea that he would have at least a bit of guilt regarding it. And if his conscience got to him after doing this, that he would not be able to live with himself. And then thus, once again, he would be found close by, whether because he killed himself or was just going to sit there until the police caught him, something like that. That is all how I came to the decision that I'm guessing he's probably close by. That's how I did it. Even though I knew, even at that time, that area was searched around that campground or whatever it was, I still insisted, yeah, I think he's going to be found close. And I don't think it was luck. I know some people, it was just lucky, Ed. I don't think so. I've gotten too many of these right to think it's luck. As I make my point in part number 2 with my talk with Jason, I keep bringing it up. How is it that I can get the predictions on so many of these disappearances right when I have no police experience? I have no law enforcement experience, no criminal justice education experience or anything else, but I still do a pretty good job of predicting these things. How is that possible? Why? Because it can be learned if you take the time. So that's how I did it. No secrets. I'm perfectly willing to tell people how I go about doing this. Have I gotten some wrong? Yes. But they're mainly ones that are early in Unfound's existence when I was still a newbie, kind of like Crystal Morrison, even Shanna Boydo. Of course, I ended up to that this past summer, and a few others. But start looking at more recent disappearances that Unfound covered that got solved. Pretty accurate. It can be learned. Just got to take the time, study it. All right, what else? Let's go on to the next thing. Jeffrey Epstein. I have to get to these two other topics as I promised in the title. There's still something about the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing that bothers me. And it is this. You do a lot of reading. I'm certainly not the utmost expert on all of this, but I have taken the time to look at what people have said. I looked at the trials. I looked at how they interviewed, even the pilots who were flying Jeffrey Epstein to wherever they were going, British Virgin Islands or wherever they were going. And what you see lacking from this, and we have to, first of all, we have to remember that there were a lot of people around Jeffrey Epstein just because he was a guy with a lot of money, and people who have a lot of money have a lot of people around them. As I have written here, of course, he had two pilots. What else did I write down? Of course, he had pilots. He had to have, going to this island that, existed. He had, you don't think that he was cooking meals for everybody, do you? He had to have cooks, cleaners, pilots, drivers, groundkeepers, even people who might have shown up, to fix the plumbing and everything else. All these people, and some of them have been questioned. You can find their testimony from the trials, and they were given immunity and everything else. You don't read about them running into too many famous people. Go check it for yourself. They really don't. Now, the pilots said, yeah, well, we just closed the door. And, I don't know if I'm supposed to believe that or not. But it's amazing that we hear, of course, we've heard about Prince Andrew. We've heard about Bill Clinton. But are these people not being enticed enough? We hear about all these famous people. Are they not being enticed enough? I guess what I'm also asking is, what is it that they don't mind mentioning Bill Clinton being on one of these planes, but they might hesitate on mentioning other people? Of course, I'm not inclined to believe this, but of course, there's that whole conspiracy theory out there regarding the Clintons and all these people who have died around them. You think it would make people bring Bill, I'm not hearing to get into politics, Bill and Hillary up less because of it. Instead, he's one of the most prominent people mentioned. It's hard to understand. Where is this list from the cooks and the cleaners and the pilots and the drivers and the groundskeepers and the plumbers and everybody working on the plane and everybody else that would be around Jeffrey Epstein? Once again, not for party purposes, because that was the work they do, because once again, rich people don't do any work. They don't mow their own grass and things. Surely these people would have been in positions to see a lot of these people that were allegedly with Jeffrey Epstein on this island with these girls, and still we have nothing. Once again, they have named some people, but it's like the same 2 or 3 people over and over and over. Whereas we're led to believe that it's 50, 100 power players all over the world. It's hard to understand. You go to the other side of this, and then once again, I am not an expert in this. I know people follow this and they got into all the conspiracy theories. he was killed and all of this. But I just was looking at what was said at the trials as best as I can tell. I've not seen any transcripts or anything. But it's been said that there are hundreds of girls who were abused and went to this island and all over the place. Hundreds. So when I think hundreds, I think at least 200 girls. That lawyers have said existed and everything else. Whereas, how many have come forward? 4? 5? Virginia Jeffrey, I think that's how you pronounce her name, and a few others. And even for them, what are their stories? If you go look and see what their stories are mainly about Jeffrey Epstein himself and the woman with him, Ghislaine Maxwell, however you pronounce her name. It was mainly those two abusing them, not anybody famous, not anybody else who was famous. And most of that happened right here in the United States. It's hard to understand. So when were these parties taking place at this retreat where it was outside the United States and you can only fly there? How were these girls getting there? How many planes exist? Or were they flying commercial? And what were these, if they were coming in from all over the world? Let's say that there were girls coming in from Africa and South America and Europe. What were they telling people, and where are they now? Where are they now? We have to remember, Jeffrey Epstein is dead. The Maxwell woman, I think she was in jail. Maybe she's like in a halfway house or something. There have been a few women who have come forward, but it's all about stuff that happened in the United States. Certainly Jeffrey Epstein's a bad guy. But I have a hard time understanding how these big parties and everything were working at this retreat that was outside the United States. Once again, I think it was in the British Virgin Islands. How exactly did that work? How did the girls get there? How did he get there? This is a fairly big operation, if you don't mind me saying. Everybody knows, anybody who has thrown like a big party, like a Super Bowl party, how much preparation it takes to bring a bunch of people together. It's not like he's going to fly all these people in and they're just going to, it's all going to be bread and water for everybody. You have to bring in all this food, and everything else. It takes a lot of planning. And I'm reminded of a line, I think it was in the movie No Way Out with Kevin Costner, a great movie, which has a really great surprise ending. But there's a line in there about this thing called the Phantom Submarine, and how the cost overruns. It's like a government movie. And there's a line, I think, in that movie where it says, what's so big, you won't even need sonar. Our enemy will only have to look out in the water and see the big bump in the ocean. It was a joke. This is the way that I look at that. If this was really going on, it would take so many people to make this happen. It would be such a big conspiracy that everybody would know about it. Everybody would have known about it while it was going on. Whether it was, 15-year-old girls or actually adult women. This is one of those things. Where are these women? I realize that some women are afraid to come forward, have been afraid to come forward because of rape and everything. Get it. But if you're talking hundreds, and you're talking that the main instigator is now dead, and that I know that Veronica Jeffrey, or Victoria, or whatever her name, Virginia Jeffrey is now dead. Suicide. I think she had mental health issues. And we have to remember, in looking what she said, it was only her word. All these other women who have come forward, they're all still alive. Are there hits out on them or something? They're still alive. This should encourage more women to come forward and see. Instead, it's just American women. And I have it written here, the conspiracy to put this big party together where all these rich people were getting together. The conspiracy, the planning would have been so big that you should have been able to see it from space. The other women's names, Maria Farmer, Ann Farmer. They only ever named 2 people. Maybe Prince Andrew was in there too. Epstein and the Maxwell women. And we only have their word. Even though there's allegations that he was just throwing these big crazy parties, I'm still wondering how that was all arranged. And you can't find it anywhere. How did that all get put together? Who did all the planning and the cooking and everything else? There's nothing out there. So I'm waiting. Cranky says, greetings and salutations. I love that. You too, Cranky. Also, keep in mind, Rockford says how lucrative it would have been for some insider to sell the story. I think people picture parties like we saw in True Detective Season 2. I've never watched that, so I don't know what that is. But once again, Jeffrey Epstein knows whether these women are over age or not. Do you know how big of a risk it is to invite all these underage girls to go to an island in the British Virgin Islands from all over the world to meet with famous people and then just cross your fingers and hope they don't blab to all their friends when they go back to their host countries? Because one blabber does, and maybe that's exactly what happened. But so I continue to believe, even though I think Jeffrey Epstein and this Maxwell woman were horrible, I'm also wondering if this isn't just another version of, when a serial killer says, no, I didn't kill 3 people, I killed 30, and offers no proof. I wonder. I'm just being honest. You know me, I'm cynical, as I've learned. It pays to be cynical about all this. I realize there are a bunch of people who really want this all to be true. Why? I don't know. I don't know why you would ever root for a bunch of underage girls to be getting raped or women to really be getting raped. I don't know why you would want that. Why would you want that? There's no proof of it. So you're just believing it because you want to believe it. And I will insist, I absolutely believe this. If there ever is a list, quote unquote, that ever comes out and everybody wants to see it, here's what I know is going to happen. People are going to look at the list. The people who they hate on the list, they're going to say, oh yeah, I completely believe it. But the people that they like on the list, they're going to say, oh, this list is fake. That is going to happen. And that's why the releasing of a list or whatever else is not going to change anything. It'll only make it worse if a list even exists. I don't believe it exists. There, I said it. There always seems to be a huge amount of silence surrounding these rings. John Wayne Gacy and Devin Karlbach both linked to the Delta ring. Hundreds of victims, allegedly only 1 or 2 came forward, right? Hey, I realize, a lot of people have skeletons in their closets. I realize that there are a lot of 45-year-old housewives who, when they were 20, were strippers and their husbands have no idea. I get that. And I ran into that all the time in Las Vegas. I understand that. But I also think that there are a lot of brave women out there who want their stories told and who can offer proof that they were there. They can explain, here's what my room looked like. Here's the plane. Here were the dates. This is the airline I flew. This is what the airport looks like. I can really prove that I was on that island and I was in that building, on and on and on, and you have none. You have none. And Jeffrey Epstein is so powerful that he couldn't keep himself out of jail. So I don't want to hear that he's just so powerful and he couldn't keep himself out of jail. O.J. Simpson kept himself out of jail. Jeffrey Epstein couldn't do the same, being all allegedly powerful and everything, knowing all the rich people and powerful people that he knew. Okay. All right, moving on. What do I mean by death row info? This new show's out. It's called Death Row Confidential. And former guest of Unfound, Kenneth Maines, plays a prominent role. And I'm not going to ruin it. You can find at least one of the parts of the show on YouTube for free on the Oxygen channel. And it has to do with a guy who is on death row getting information on another guy on death row, and collecting all this information about the serial killer over years and then sending it to Ken. And then this became a TV show called Death Row Confidential. And it's just coming out these days. I got to be honest, even though Ken was on Unfound way back in 2017, I watched the one that was on. I do have the Oxygen channel, I think. But I watched the one part on YouTube, and I have to admit, this is not something that I would ever do. Even though I myself am communicating with the guy who is in jail for the rest of his life, Steve Pankey, although he is not on death row. So I know what it's like to communicate with the guy who's in jail and is not getting out. Okay, once again, I don't have the time to go through everything, and you can go watch it and decide for yourself. Once again, if you don't get the Oxygen channel, just go here on YouTube, go to the Oxygen channel, channel, and you'll find the one part. It's like an hour and a half long or something. The problem I have is what essentially it is, basically, is that there is a guy on death row. He was known as the Alphabet Killer. His last name is Naso, Naso. And there is another killer who was on death row. His last name is Noguera, who got to know Naso and collected all this information that says that Naso killed a lot more women than he was convicted for back in like 2013 or something. He collected all of this information and sent it to Kenneth Maines. He didn't send it to the San Francisco Police Department where a lot of these murders took place. Instead, he sent it to Kenneth Maines for some reason. And already they made a TV show about it, even though this Naso guy who's like 91 years old, he's never been charged with anything. He's in jail for the murders he was convicted for. But for all of these murders he allegedly committed that he told this other death row inmate about, no convictions, nothing. Nobody's been charged with anything. But they're already making a TV show about it. And I'm thinking of the movie Zodiac that I've been watching here recently, where, Dave Toschi, the San Francisco police officer who was trying to catch Zodiac, he goes to the movies, and they made the Dirty Harry movie where the killer was a Scorpio. And, the Zodiac, of course, has never been identified. And Dave Toschi says something like, yep, they're already making a movie about it. I'm still working the case. The Zodiac killer's still out there, and they're already making a movie kind of like what I'm doing here in real life, even though the case isn't over yet. There is an ethics question regarding all of this. There is. Is this not tainting the jury pool by doing a TV show about murders by a guy who very well still could be, even though he's 91 years old, still could be charged with them? Is that not tainting the jury pool? In addition, we don't know how this information was collected. Remember, it was collected by a killer who was talking to another killer. How do we know that I realize, of course, what this guy, is saying. Oh, no, I was just talking to him. There's no proof of that. How do we know that he did not extort this information out of this other guy. It is jail. You know, jail rape is, I think, a real thing. That's why I'm too good looking to go to jail. You could never use any of this information in court because you don't know how it was collected. You can use it for a TV show, but good luck trying to get it into a trial because you know some defense attorney is going to say, yeah, my client was threatened, with rape and torture if he didn't talk about something that he may or may not have done. This is why, as I talked about in the most recent update episode, if somebody sends me any information, I'm not looking to be on TV. I promise you that. I make that oath to all of you because I find it to be unethical. It's not immoral. You didn't steal the information or anything else, kind of just lay it in your lap. It's not illegal, at least unless, of course, the information was gotten through extortion, through threats and things, which would never be allowed in court, whether it happened in jail or not. I would get information like that, I promise all of you. I would bring it right to the San Francisco police. I would not feel it's my job. I don't care if I was a former police officer or not, to go look into it for myself because I could do a TV show. Put it in the hands of the people who are responsible for it, who have the knowledge and everything else. And of course, I would, of course, even be suspicious that somebody even sent it to me. If I got that information, I guess it's like 300 pages or something. If some death row inmate sent me a stack of information like this with a note saying, I couldn't send it to the police because, I don't know if I could prove all of this, but I know you can work on it. You know what I'm doing? I'm boxing it back up. I might look at it. I certainly wouldn't copy it. I certainly wouldn't talk about it on this show. I'd send it right to the San Francisco Police Department with a note saying, hey, here's what I got in the mail. I don't know why, but maybe you can do something to it. Maybe this Nassau guy did kill all these women. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. But it's certainly not my job to find out about it. Certainly would like to, but I think it would be unethical. But they're already doing a TV show about it. And it seems to be very popular. A lot of people, nice reviews and everything. But I want to tell all of you, if you watch it, it's not right. And I like Ken. I've been talking to Ken for a while. I've always gotten along with him. But I do wonder how he would feel when he was still a police officer if some inmate sent information to some YouTuber like what Ken is now. And then that person, instead of sending it to Ken, who is the investigator, the guy just starts doing his own investigation instead. I wonder. And we wonder why the police have such a poor attitude toward true crime people. We wonder. I would not do that. All right, I would not do that. I'm here to help. I'm here to assist. I'm here to give guidance and everything else. This is why when people send me information, I say, you know what? Send it to the police. If you think it's good information, it's best in their hands, not my hands. It's best in their hands. They're the ones that can do the best with it, not me. And certainly not Ken Maines, as much as respect I have for him as a police officer. But this should not have been done, clearly. Of course, with Steve Pankey, he was already in jail when all the TV shows came out. Totally different situation. Rockford, I won't be watching. Check out what Nogueira did to get himself on death row. I did. Not pleasant. Who's to say he wasn't manipulating everyone in prison land now? I know. You're right, Rockford. But, I think I've made my point for tonight. I'm out of time anyway. What are we doing this Friday? We're doing a revisitation episode just because I wanted to. So disappearance, all you know well. We're going to take another look at it. This will give the Unfound think tank a chance to talk about it. Stephen Kocher. That will be the revisitation episode this Friday. Of course, there was no interview. It's my experience with it because I lived in Las Vegas at the time. I took part in a search, and I talk about it during that episode that came out way back, I think, in 2018. But I want to revisit this, going to offer some new commentary now that we've had a lot of years to think about it. And then this will give the think tank, the smartest audience in true crime, a chance for us in our little private group to talk about what we think happened to Stephen Kocher, because he is still missing, going back to December 13th of 2009. So that's all I got for you tonight, but I can assure you the week after we'll get back to some really strong episodes. Very excited about things that are coming up in for these new disappearances. They've been talking to a lot of people, actually. Very fortunate, very happy about that. That's all I got for you tonight. Anything else? Got to the things in the title. That's spectacular. That's it. Everybody keep your heads on swivels out there. Do not end up on my podcast. Charlie, say hi to the kids for me. Good night.